Hello, good evening, and good morning. It's like right on the in between, right? Hey, Desert, welcome in. Awesome. Thanks. I'm glad you're digging them. I'm liking these books so much. It's me too. Me too. So I thought we'd get into some more of this Seership Guide to Soul Sight and the magic mirror and how to use it. And we're actually now into the magic mirror and how to use it. Okay. So right where we left off last. Madame George Sand gives an account of the famous Compton Saint-Germain, and that goes to 29. Comte de Saint-Germain was a member of the secret council of the Rosicrucian fraternity of that day and the instructor of the famous Cagliostro. Cagliostro is not to be confused with that Balsamo, of whom so much has been written, and who has been so roundly abused by a multitude of writers. These were two entirely distinct persons. Much of the history of both Saint Germain and Cagliostro will be found in the magazine The Initiates and the People. All right, so it says, I'm going to read that sentence again because it wasn't even the full sentence before we went on to that thing. Madame George Sands gives an account of the famous Comte de Saint-Germain, one of the most remarkable magic mirrorists that ever lived this side of the hills in India, and of whom it was claimed that he had lived for centuries despite the wear and tear of time and the surging revolutions of decaying empires. Then it says, quote, this is what her account. What makes this Comte de Saint-Germain a remarkable personage, to say that, in my opinion, is the number of new and ingenious claims by which he unravels the doubtful points of the obscure history of states. Question him about any subject or epoch of history, and you will be surprised to hear him unfold or invent an infinity of probable and interesting things, which throw a new light on what has been doubtful and mysterious. Mere erudition does not suffice to explain history. This man must have a mighty mind and great knowledge of humanity. It is with great difficulty that he can be made to talk of the wonderful things. He is aware that he is treated as a charlatan and dreamer, and this seems to trouble him much. He refuses to explain his supernatural power. He has filled Europe with countless strange tales. End quote. Of Count Cagliostro, George Sand said, quote, "It is well known, when Frederick the Great ordered him to quit Berlin, that he left it in his carriage, in propria persona, at 12 exactly, passing at the same time through each of the gates. At least 20,000 people will swear to that. The guards at every gate saw the same hat, wig, carriage, and horses, and you cannot convince them that on that day there were not at least 6 Cagliostros in the field." End quote. I got a flash of that movie. Hey, buddy, Turnbuckle Tuesdays. Woo! I got a flash of that movie. Was it The Illusionist? I don't think it's The Illusionist. It's the other one. With Hugh Jackman. And what's his name? Anyways. Dang. What is that guy's name? The main character. I can see his face. I just had a coughing fit right before I went live. Excuse me. That same Cagliostro fashioned and owned a magic mirror, now in Florence, Italy, in which whosoever he permitted to gaze could and did see any three things or persons they desired to, no matter whether living or dead. And as sacredly believe thousands as sacredly believe this as they do that two and two make four. Nor is this belief any part or panel of or Nor is this belief any part or parcel of spiritism, so called, nor superstition, but it is perfectly scientific, the whole thing being of a magnetic nature. Clairvoyance, under unusual conditions, and easily formulated exactly, as will be done before I finish this monograph, I quote: Frederick the Great was thus forced to resume his philosophical serenity without assistance. He said, quote, Since we are talking of Cagliostro, and the hour for ghosts and stories has come, I will tell you one which will show how hard it is to have faith in sorcerers. My story is true, for I have it from the person to whom it happened last year. Is the story terrible? Asked La Mettrie. Perhaps, said Frederick. Then I will shut the door, for I cannot listen with the door gaping. La Mettrie shut the door, and the king spoke as follows, quote, Cagliostro, as you know, had the trick of showing people pictures, or rather magic mirrors, on which he caused the absent to appear. He pretended to be able to reveal the most secret occupations of their lives in this manner. Jealous women went to consult him about the infidelities of their husbands, and some lovers and husbands have learned a great deal about their ladies' capers. The magic mirror has betrayed mysteries of iniquity. Be that as it may, the opera singers all met one night and offered him a good supper and admirable music, provided he would perform some of his feats. He consented and appointed a day to meet Conciolini, the Signore Astura, and Porporina, and show them heaven or hell as they pleased. Oh, mother of pearls. The Barberini family were also there. Giovanna Barberini asked to see the late Doge of Venice, and as Cagliostro gets up ghosts in very good style, he was very much frightened, and rushed completely overpowered from the cabinet in which Cagliostro had placed her, tete-a-tete with the Doge. La Porporina, with the calm expression which, as you know, is so peculiar to her, told Cagliostro she would have faith in his science if he would show her the person of whom she then thought, but whom it was not necessary for her to name, for if he was a sorcerer, he must be able to read her soul as he would read a book. What you ask is not a trifle, said our Count, yet I think I can satisfy you. What you ask is not a trifle, said our Count, yet I think I can satisfy you, provided that you swear, by all that is holy and terrible, not to speak to the person I shall evoke, to make no motion nor gesture, to utter no sound, while the apparition stands before you. Porporina promised to do so, and went boldly into the dark closet. I need not tell you, gentlemen, that this young woman is one of the most intellectual and correct persons to be met with. She is well educated, thinks well about all matters, and I have reason to know no narrow or restricted idea makes any impression upon her. She remained in the ghost room long enough to make her companions very uneasy. All was silent as possible, and finally she came out very pale, and with tears streaming from her eyes. She immediately said to her companions, If Cagliostro be a sorcerer, he is a deceiving one. Have faith in nothing that he shows you. She would say no more. Conciolini, however, told me a few days after, at one of my concerts, of this wonderful entertainment. I promised myself to question Porporina about it. The first time she sang at Sans Suchi, Suki, Souci, at Sans Souci, I had much difficulty in making her speak of it, but thus she told me, quote, Cagliostro has, beyond a doubt, the strange power of producing spectres so like truth that it is impossible for the calmest minds to be unmoved by them. His knowledge, however, is incomplete, and I would not advise you, sire, to make him your minister of police, for he would perpetrate strange mistakes. Thus, when I asked him to show me the absent person I wished to see, I thought of my music master, Porpora, who is now at Vienna. Instead of him, I saw in the magic room a very dear friend I lost during the current year. Peste, said D'Argens. That is more wonderful even than the apparition of a living person. Wait a moment, gentlemen. Cagliostro had no doubt but that what he had shown was the phantom of a living person, and when it had disappeared, asked Porporina if what she had seen was satisfactory. In the first place, monsieur, she said, I wish to understand it. Will you explain? That surpasses my power. Be assured that your friend is well, and usefully employed. To this the signora replied, Alas, sir, you have done me much wrong. You showed me a person of whom I did not think, and who is, you say, now living. I closed his eyes 6 months ago. All this is very fine, said La Mettrie, but does not explain how your Majest's Porporina saw the dead alive. If she is gifted with as much firmness and reason as your Majesty says, the fact goes to disprove your Majesty's argument. The sorcerer, it is true, was mistaken in producing a dead rather than a living man. It, however, makes it the more certain that he controls both life and death. In that respect, he is greater than your Majesty, which, if it does not displease your Majesty, has killed many men, but never resurrected a single one. Then we are to believe in the devil, said the king. Then we are to believe in the devil, said the king, laughing at the comic glances of La Mettrie at Quintus Acilius. At Quintus Acilius. Quint, is that like 5? To conclude, your Porporina is either foolish or credulous, and saw her dead man, or she was philosophical and saw nothing. She was frightened, however. Not so, she was distressed, said the king, as all naturally would be, at the sight or portrait which would exactly recall a person loved, but whom we shall see no more. But if I must tell you all, I will say that she subsequently was afraid, and that her moral power after this test was not in so sound a state as it was previously. Thenceforth, she has been liable to a dark melancholy, which is always the proof of weakness or disorder of our faculties. Her mind was touched, I am confident, though she denies it. I missed a number here. Where is it? What does it go to? I think I did, because it's on this page. Oh, it's right at the very top from this other sentence. Instead of him, I saw the magic room, a very dear friend I lost during the current year, 30. It is a mistaken idea that the seer, however great he may be, is capable of causing certain persons to appear through the medium of a mirror, or even that dictated messages can be given. All the seer can do is to prepare the mirror, and then that which is hidden deep in the heart will be portrayed. In many instances, our deepest feelings may be subconscious, and it is only when we come in in touch with things of a spiritual nature that they betray themselves and us. Hey, Tanya. Awesome. Shit, I don't know what you're talking about. The Steve. Oh no, there's a real big itch on my eyeball here. It's all good. Oh, balls. Okay. All right. Then it says, quote, dot, 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 quote, and I confess I am under the influence, if not under the power of Cagliostro. Imagine that after having promised to show me the person of whom I thought, the name of whom he pretended to read in my eyes, he showed me another. Besides, he showed me a person as living, whom he did not know to be dead. 31. There are no dead except those who have destroyed themselves by committing sins against the Holy Ghost. All others are as active shortly after passing as they are in life. In fact, more so, because the inertia of the body drops off after we leave the earth plane, and then the spirit governs, incites to action, and dictates. We use the term spirit for the reason that no term has as yet been coined which exactly suits the condition of a soul which has not been illuminated in life on earth and is therefore not in reality self-conscious. Wow. Delaney, welcome in. Awesomeo. Welcome all. Notwithstanding this double error, he resuscitated the husband I had lost, and that will ever be to me a painful and inexpressible enigma. He showed you some phantom, and fancy filled up the details. And that was somebody else saying something. And now I think this is her responding. I can assure you that my fancy was in no respect interested. I expected to see in the mirror some representation of Maestro Porpora, for I had spoken often of him at supper, and while deploring his absence, had seen that Cagliostro paid no little attention to my words. To make his task more easy, I chose in my mind the face of Porpora as the subject of the apparition, and I expected him certainly, not having as yet considered the test as serious. Finally, at perhaps the only moment in my life in which I did not think of the Count, he appeared. 32. Thought is frequently superficial. In the deeper moments of life, we may be thinking, nevertheless, beneath the thought, there is memory, which is far stronger than the moment's thought. It is memory which shadows itself in the spiritual vision, rather than either the superficial thought or desire of the moment. Wow. Hmm. Cagliostro asked me, when I went into the magic closet, if I would consent to have my eyes bandaged and follow him, holding on to his hand. As he was a man of good reputation, I did not hesitate, but made it a condition that he would not leave me for an instant. I was going, he said, to address you a request not to leave me a moment, and not to let go my hand, without regard to what may happen, or what emotion you may feel. I promised him, but a simple affirmative did not suffice. He made me solemnly swear that I would make no gesture nor exclamation, but remain mute and silent during the whole of the experiment. He then put on his glove, and having covered my head with a hood of black velvet, which fell over my shoulders, He made me walk about 5 minutes without my being able to hear any door opened or shut. The hood kept me from being aware of any change in the atmosphere, therefore I could not know whether I had gone out of the room or not, for he made me make such frequent turns that I had no appreciation of the direction. At last he paused, and with one hand removed the hood, so lightly that I was not even aware of it. My respiration having become more free, he informed me that I might look around. I found myself, however, in such intense darkness that I could ascertain nothing. After a short time, I saw a luminous star, which at first trembled and soon became brilliant before me. At first, it seemed most remote, but when at its brightest, appeared very near me. It was produced, I think, of a light which became more and more intense, and which was behind a transparency. Cagliostro made me approach the star, which was an orifice pierced in the wall. On the other side of that wall, I saw a chamber magnificently decorated and filled with lights regularly arranged. This room, in its character and ornaments, had every air of a place dedicated to magical operations. One second, I'm going to cough for a second. All right. I got to find that sentence. Magic operations. I had not time, however, to examine it, my attentions being absorbed by a person who sat before a table. He was alone, and hid his face with his hands, as if immersed in deep meditation. I could not see his features, and his person was disguised by a costume in which I had hitherto seen no one. As far as I was able to remark, it was a robe or cloak of white satin, faced with purple, fastened over the breast with hieroglyphic gems, on which I observed a rose, a triangle, a cross, a death's head. 34. But we haven't even done 33. Wait. And many rich ribbons of various kinds. All that I could see was that it was not purpura. After 1 or 2 minutes, this mysterious personage, which I began to fancy a statue, slowly moved its hands, and I saw the face of Count Albert distinctly, not as it had last met my gaze, covered with the shadows of death, but animated amid its pallor, and full of soul in its serenity. Such, in fine, as I had seen in it, such in fine as I had seen it in its most beautiful seasons of calm and confidence. And that says 33, which links to the insignia of a brother of the Rose Cross, having attained in life to the status of illumination. It is but natural that he should be seen just as in life, for he who has attained initiation or illumination will continue after life just as during life. He is merely active in a different sphere. I was on the point of uttering a cry, and by an involuntary movement, crushing crystal which separated him from me. I'm going to read that again. I was on the point of uttering a cry, and by an involuntary movement, crushing crystal which separated him from me. A violent pressure of Cagliostro's hand reminded me of my oath, and impressed me with I know not what vague terror. Just then a door opened at the extremity of the room, in which I saw Albert. And many unknown persons, dressed as he was, joined him, each bearing a sword. After having made strange gestures, as if they had been playing a pantomime, they spoke to him in a very solemn tone, words I could not comprehend. He arose and went towards them. Hey, there's actually an S on the end of that one. Maybe that's why I always add an S. I don't know. He arose and went towards them and replied in words equally strange and which were unintelligible to me, though now I know German nearly as well as my mother tongue. This dialogue was like that which we hear in dreams, and the strangeness of the scene, the miracle of the apparition, had so much of this character that I really doubted whether I dreamed of not. Cagliostro, however, forced me to be motionless, and I recognized the voice of Albert so perfectly that I could not doubt the reality of what I saw. Yeah, man. Yeah. I've always felt really I guess even just like good about myself for the way that I could identify people from their voices. And I have heard voices before that remind me of people. And, have you ever been tricked into thinking it's someone you know, and then you realize, oh my gosh, that's not my dad, or that's not my sister, you know? Everything is subjective. That I could not doubt the reality of what I saw. At last, completely carried away by the scene, I was about to forget my oath and speak to him, when the hood again was placed over my head and all became dark. If you make the least noise, said Cagliostro, neither you, not I, will see the light again. That is what it says. Neither you, not I, will see the light again. I had strength enough to follow him and walk for a long time amid the zigzags of an unknown space. Finally, when he took the hood away again, I found myself in his laboratory, which was dimly lighted, as it had been at the commencement of this adventure. Cagliostro was very pale and still trembled, for, as I walked with him, I became aware of a convulsive agitation of his arm, and that he hurried me along as if he was under the influence of great terror. The first thing he said was to reproach me bitterly about my want of loyalty and the terrible dangers to which I had exposed him by wishing to violate my promises. I should have remembered, said he, that women are not bound by their word of honor, and that one should forbear to accede to their rash and vain curiosity. His tone was very angry. Oh, that makes me so angry. Hitherto I had participated in the terror of my guide. I had been so amazed at Albert's being alive that I had not inquired if this was possible. I had even forgotten that death had bereft me of this dear and precious friend. The emotion of that magician recalled to me that all this was very strange and that I had seen only a specter. My reason, however, repudiated what was impossible, and the bitterness of the reproaches of Cagliostro caused a kind of ill humor, which projected me from weakness. You feign to have faith in your own falsehood, I said, with vivacity. Ah, your game is very cruel. Yes, you sport with all that is most holy, even with death itself. Quote, soul without faith and without power, he said, angrily, but in a most imposing manner. You believe in death, as the vulgar do, and yet you had a great master, one who said, we do not die, nothing dies. There is nothing dies. You accuse me of falsehood, and seem to forget that the only thing which is untrue here is the name of death in your impious mouth. I confess that this strange reply overturned all my thoughts, and for a moment overcame the resistance of my troubled mind. How came this man to be aware of my relations with Albert, and even the secrets of his doctrine? He did believe as Albert did, or did he make use of this as a means to acquire an ascendancy over me? I was confused in alarm, or quote, I was confused in alarm. Soon, however, okay, so this is just the continuation of the story. I was confused and alarmed. Soon, however, I said that the gross manner of interpreting Albert's faith could not be mine, and that God, not the impostor Cagliostro, can invoke death or recall life. Finally, convinced that I was the dupe of an inexplicable illusion, the explanation of which, however, I might someday find, praising coldly the savior fair of the sorcerer, and asked him for an explanation of the whimsical conversation his phantoms had together. In relation to that, he replied that it was impossible to satisfy me. It actually says satishmi, satishimi, satishimi, Satishy me, and that I should be satisfied with, and that one says satisfied, and that I should be satisfied with seeing the person calm and carefully occupied. You will ask me in vain, added he, what are his thoughts and actions in life? I am ignorant even of his name. When you desired and asked to see it, there was formed between you two a mysterious communication, which my power was capable of making able to bring you together. All science goes no farther. No, yes, all science goes no farther to 34. And I want to look at that Satish, I think it's supposed to satisfy, but father. All science goes no farther. 34. An exact statement of the law. The seer or master can do no more than establish a communication. The soul then reveals itself. The wise man does not speak of that which he has seen, but remembers the statement of Paul. Quote, how that he, Paul, was caught up into paradise and heard unspeakable words, which it is not possible for a man to utter, end quote. Your science, I said, does not reach that far even. I thought of Porpora, and you did not present him to me. Of that I know nothing, said he, in a tone serious and terrible. I do not wish to know. I have been nothing either in your mind or in the magic mirror. My mind would not support such a spectacle, and I must maintain all my senses to exercise my power. The laws of science are infallible, and consequently, though not aware of it yourself, you must have thought of someone else than Porpora, since you did not see the latter. Such is talk of a madman of that kind. Such is the talk of madmen of that kind, said the princess, shrugging her shoulders. Each one has his peculiar mode, though all by means of a captious reasoning, which may be called the method of madness, so contrive by disturbing the ideas of others, that they are never cut short or disturbed themselves. Okay, so captious and that other word too. Looking it up. All right. There's a hair stuck to my lip. Oh, pate means head. T-A-P-T-I-O-U-S definition.
Captious.
Captious. Of a person tending to find fault or raise petty objections. A captious teacher. Okay. By means of a captious reasoning. So this is the princess talking. Such is the talk of a madman of that kind, said the princess, shrugging her shoulders. Each one has his peculiar mode, though all by means of a captious reasoning, which may be called the method of madness, so contrived by disturbing the ideas of others, that they are never cut short or disturbed themselves. Okay, and then I'm going to look up this one, S-A-T-I-S-H-Y. Hey, Mama. It says that Satish is a boy's name of Sanskrit and Indian origin. The name is very popular in the Hindu religion and has multiple meanings, including God of Truth, Lord of Hundreds, Victorious, and Sunrise. The name also refers to Lord of Sati, deriving from the Hindu goddess Sati. Sati? I bet it means satisfy, though. I think that's what it was supposed to say. All right, back to the YouTubes. Hey, Creatrix, welcome in. Awesome. He certainly disturbed mine, said Consuelo. Oh man, my ears feel like they need to pop. And I was no longer able to analyze them. The apparition of Albert, true or false, made me more distinctly aware that I had lost him forever, and I shed tears. Consuelo said the magician in a solemn tone, and offering me his hand. You may imagine that my real name, hitherto unknown to all, was an additional surprise when I heard him speak it. You have great errors to repair, and I trust you will neglect nothing to regain your peace of mind. I had not power to reply. I sought in vain to hide my tears from my companions, who waited impatiently for me in the next room. I was more impatient yet to withdraw, and as soon as I was alone, after having given a free course to my grief, I passed the night in reflections and commentaries on the scenes of this fatal evening. The more I sought to understand it, the more I became lost in a labyrinth of uncertainty. And I must own that my ideas were often worse than an implicit obedience to the oracles of magic would have been. Worn out by fruitless suffering, I resolved to suspend my judgment until there should be light. Since then, however, I have been impressionable, subject to the vapors, sick at heart, and deeply sad. ... Quote, you were about to tell me that he died during the conclusion of the marriage ceremony. I will, however, tell you that he is not dead. that no one, that nothing dies, and that we may still have communion with those the vulgar call dead, if we know their language and the secret of their lives. ... Quote. While for the miracles which are about to be accomplished, God, who apparently mingles in nothing, who is eternal silence, creates among us beings of a nature superior to our own, both for good and evil, angels and demons, hidden powers. The latter are to test the just, the former to ensure their triumph. The contest between the great powers has already begun. The king of evil, the father of ignorance and crime, defends himself in vain. The archangels have bent the bow of science, bent the bow of science and of truth, and their arrows have pierced the corslet of Satan. Satan roars and struggles, but soon will abandon falsehood, lose his venom, and, instead of the impure blood of reptiles, will feel the dew of pardon circulate through his veins. This is the clear and certain explanation of all that is incomprehensible and terrible in the world. Good and evil contend in higher religions, which are unattainable to men. Victory and defeat soar above us, without its being possible for us to fix them. Yes, I say it is clear that men are ignorant of what occurs on earth. They see impiety, impiety, arm itself against fate. Dang it, and vice versa. I can't remember. Let's look up impiety. Lack of piety or reverence, yeah, especially for a god. Okay, so isn't irreverence an impious act? Okay, cool beans. Hey, sweet dreams, Rose. Thanks for being here. Crap, I don't remember where I am at all. Nope, not over there yet. Arrows, here we go. The impure blood of the reptiles. Okay. This is the clear and certain explanation of all that is incomprehensible and terrible in the world. Good and evil contend in higher regions, which are unattainable to men. Victory and defeat soar above us, without its being possible for us to fix them. Yes, I say it is clear that men are ignorant of what occurs on earth. They see impiety arm itself against fate, and vice versa. They suffer depression, misery, and all the scourges of discord, without their prayers being heard, without the intervention of the miracles of any religion. They now understand nothing. They complain. They know not why. They walk blindfolded on the brink of a precipice. To this the invisibles impel them, though none know if their mission be of God or of evil. As at the commencement of Christianity, Simon the magician seemed, to many, to being divine and powerful as Christ. I tell you all prodigies are of God, for Satan can achieve none without permission being granted him, and that among those called invisibles, some act by direct light from the Holy Spirit, while to others the light comes through a cloud, and they do good, fatally thinking that they do evil. A few fair persons have come A few fair persons have the power of commanding their ideas in a state of contemplative idleness, which is granted less frequently to the happy in this world than those who earn their living by toil, persecution, and danger. All must recognize this mystery as providential, without which the serenity of many unfortunate creatures would appear impossible to those who have not known misfortune. She then went to a rich toilet, a table of white marble sustaining a mirror, in golden frame of excellent taste. Her attention was attracted by an inscription on the upper ornament of the mirror. It was, quote, "If your soul be as pure as your crystal, you will see yourself in it always, young and beautiful. But if vice has withered your heart, be fearful of reading in me the stern reflection of moral deformity." Mirror, mirror on a wall. If the thought of evil be in your heart, you are unworthy of contemplating the divine spectacle of nature. If your heart be the home of virtue, look up and bless God, who opens to you the door of a terrestrial paradise. The loftiest spiritualism the world ever saw, that of ancient Jewry, recognized the truth of such mirrors, for they, the Urim and Thummim, polished breastplates, were used for purposes of a celestial divination and are still so used today. Even many of the modern spiritualists recognize the same truths, for their papers frequently contain articles on crystal seeing and the magical uses of various jewels and precious stones, while one of their noblest psalms of life contains this beautiful verse: "But most the watching angels guide the thought. If in the mortal's heart be wrong or error, soon by the pure and viewless influence taught, he sees the end where leads the tortuous path, its darkness and its dangers, and awaking, he finds within his soul a holier faith, and turns with heart his sin forsaking." But most the watching angels guide the thought. If in the mortal's heart be wrong or error, soon by the pure and viewless influence taught, he sees the end where leads the tortuous path, its darkness and its dangers, and awaking, he finds within his soul a holier faith, and turns with heart his sin forsaking. The Chief Rosicrucian of all England says, which links to 35, Hardgrave Jenkins, Randolph and Jenkins were very close to each other and for many years maintained a regular correspondence. The Chief Rosicrucian of all England says in his recent work in Fire, "When the mind is surrendered up, as a clear glass, or in, and to it, shows of the magical world roll in, again, the gauge is according to the amount of absorption out of this world. Flights which the intelligence takes into the worlds not about us. We are as the telescope in the perfect sight-making of the optic glasses, in the focus of his glasses of sense. But there are other landscapes, and new sights float over and through the man perspectives, and in new adjustments of the preternatural soul sight, new worlds are penetrated to, or which is the same, undulate centrically to us, From out the universe, flat of shows. Basis of the Rosicrucian secret system. Of all true mysticism or occult knowledge, it is the only thing possible. And then this basis of the Rosicrucian secret system links to 36. Jennings here reveals a great deal of the true Rosicrucian system through though not many will be able to understand his barely veiled hints. However, all who have even partly entered the path will comprehend and at least in part be able to apply. To 36. Basis of the Rosicrucian secret system and of all true mysticism or occult knowledge, it is the only thing possible. We can glow by working, as by heavy strokes upon our nature, as like iron in a forge. And this, with an exulting light, forced out the immortal fire, wealth, out of another world, even to grow visible to men's mortal eyes. This is ecstasy and the divine illumination. None the less real, because we see nothing of it in the world, else we should be, as the Bible says, gods. It is in this magical world of God's light that sainthood becomes possible, and that the solid world and the exterior nature obey the godlike nature, worked and drawn magically into the circle of its power by the all-completing magnetism, all-compelling magnetism, trodden of the spirit. It is a God instinctive, magic life in which unliving things are, really, taken to life, taken to live. The first magician, who is as such recorded, and who gave distinct teachings on the subject of magic, is Zoroaster, the genius of Socrates, Platon, Porphyrius, and Iamblichus, of Chichus and Scaliger and Cardanus, is placed in the first rank, which included inward or magic sight. In later times, Robert Flood, 1638 to 1653, and the greatest magnetist and mirror seer, Paracelsus. We have records of over 3,000 grand masters of the art, all dead, and of scores, all living, right in our land, aye, within rifle shot of where these lines are penned. The plane of the mirror is before us, within so few feet or inches, but its lanes lead down the ages, and its reeds up the starry steep, and its reeds up the starry steeps of the infinite. Its field is the vastness below, within, above, and around, and elsewhere. But what elsewhere contains all life, next off this life, is an immortal factness. And then it goes on to another paragraph. In ancient times, a natural basin of rock, kept constantly full by a running stream, was a favorable haunt for its magical effect. The double meaning of the word reflection ought here to be considered, and how, gazing down into the clear water, the mind is disposed to self-retirement, and the contemplation deeply tinctures with melancholy. Rock pools and gloomy lakes figure in all stories of magic. Witness the Crayakic Pole 9 in the Highland woods of Laneshork, the Devil's Glen in the country of Wicklow, Ireland, the Swedish Blockula, the Witch Mountains of Italy, and the Babiagora between Hungary and Poland. Similar resorts in the glens of Germany were marked, as Tacitus mentions, by salt springs. It was really only another form of divination by the gloomy water pool, that attracted so much public attention. A few years ago, when Mr. Lane, in his work on modern Egypt, testified to its success as practiced in Egypt and Hindustan, that gentleman, having resolved to witness the performance of this species of psychovision, the magician commenced his operations by writing forms of invocation to his familiar spirits on 6 slips of paper. A chafing dish with some live charcoal in it was then procured, and a boy summoned who had not yet reached the age of puberty. Mr. Lane inquired who were the persons that could see in the magic mirror, and was told that they were a boy not arrived at puberty, a virgin, a black female slave, and a pregnant woman. To prevent any collusion between the sorcerer and the boy, Mr. Lane sent his servant to take the first boy he met. When all was prepared, the sorcerer threw some incense and one of the strips of paper into the chafing dish. He then took hold of the boy's right hand and drew a square, with some mystical marks, on the palm. In the center of the square, he formed the magic mirror, and desired the boy to look steadily into it, without raising his head. In the mirror, the boy declared that he saw, successively, a man sweeping, 7 men with flags, an army pitching its tents, and the various officers of state attending on the Sultan. The rest must be told by Mr. Lane himself. Quote, "The sorcerer now addressed himself to me, and asked me if I wished the boy to see any person who was absent or dead. I named Lord Nelson, of whom the boy had evidently never heard, for it was with much difficulty that he pronounced the name after several trials. The magician desired the boy to say to the Sultan, 'My master salutes thee, and desires thee to bring Lord Nelson. Bring him before my eyes, that I may see him speedily.' The boy then said so, and almost immediately added, 'A messenger has gone and brought back a man dressed in a black, or rather dark blue suit of European clothes. The man has lost his arm.' He then paused for a moment or two, and, looking more intently and more closely into the mirror, said, 'No, he has not lost his left arm, but it is placed to his breast.' This correction made his description more striking than it had been without it, since Lord Nelson generally had his empty sleeve attached to the breast of his coat, but it was the right arm that he had lost. Without saying that, I suspected the boy had made a mistake. I asked the magician whether the objects appeared in the mirror, as if actually before the eyes, or as if in the glass which makes the right appear left. He answered that they appeared as in a common mirror. This rendered the boy's description faultless. Though completely puzzled, I was somewhat disappointed with his performances, for they fell short of what he had accomplished in many instances, in presence of certain of my friends and countrymen. On one of these occasions, an Englishman present ridiculed the performance, and said that nothing would satisfy him but a correct description of the appearance of his own father, of whom he was sure no one of the company had any knowledge. The boy, accordingly, having called by name for the person alluded to, described the man, in a frank dress, with his hand placed on his head, wearing spectacles, and with one foot on the ground and the other raised behind him, as if he were stepping down from a seat. The description was exactly true in every respect. The peculiar position of the hand was occasioned by an almost constant headache, and that of the foot or leg by a stiff knee, caused by a fall from a horse in hunting. On another occasion, Shakespeare was described with the most minute exactness, both to the person and dress. And I might add several other cases in which the same magician has excited astonishment in the sober minds of several Englishmen of my acquaintance. So far, Mr. Lane, whose account may be compared with that given by my Mr. Kinglake, the author of Eothen, Eothen. It may be worth adding that in a recent case of hydromancy, or hydromancy, no to the writer, the boy could see better without the medium than with it, though he could also see reflected images in a vessel of water. This fact may be admitted to prove that such images are reflected to the eye of the seer from his own mind and brain. How the brain becomes thus enchanted, or the eye disposed for vision, is another question. Certainly it is no proof that the recollected image in the mind of the inquirer is transferred to the seer, as proofs can be shown to the contrary. When we look closely into it, nature seems woven over, almost with a magical web, and forms of the marvelous are rife. I think I might be just finding my spot to call it right now. Wow, I just saw the 111. It was 1 hour, 1 minute, and 1 second. Ah! Unless the end of this is like right up close, I think I'm going to call it. My voice is getting more gravelly. Yeah, I think this next bit was a long section. I'm not that close. I'm probably halfway. So yeah, Eothen. That's the last word that I'm doing for this installment. So thank you all. That is so fascinating, isn't it? Woo-hoo-hoo. All righty. I love yous. I wish you some good sleepins. And yeah. I'm going to relax a bit and then, you know, it's technically Friday right now, but yeah. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you so much. Mwah. Sweet dreams.